Welcome back to another episode of Meredyth with a Y. I am your host, Meredyth Willits, and today I have a functional medicine doctor here with us talking about Lyme and chronic illness and all of the things, Dr. Brad Montagne. So stay with us. Hello, everyone. This is Meredyth with a Y, and I am your host, Meredyth Willits. Today we are going to go deep, changing lives, and I am giving you the keys to the castle. Dr. Brad, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to talk to you because I have so many friends with chronic illness. I had Lyme, so welcome, welcome, welcome.
Well, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you. So tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got started in this. I know I read that you struggled with some health issues yourself, so you go.
Okay. My story started like most people's do, in a hospital room late at night. Why I was there is kind of irrelevant. No answers to any questions. Just do this and no explanation of what's there. I was 5 years old when that started, and I have no idea how many times I ended up in the hospital, gut-wrenching pain, just woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't sleep, and it produced from there. My oldest brother brought strep throat home, a lot of antibiotics. I was full of fungal infections, very young age. We went on a family vacation. Something happened to me, and the world started spinning around me. I have vertigo so bad. I was like a drunk sailor trying to stand up as a young kid, extremely active, very agile, but the world's spinning around me 24/7, 365 days a year for years.
Wow.
I taught myself how to cook at that very young age because if I ate the way the rest of my family did, I just felt sicker than a dog. So I started cooking. That did a whole bunch of other things. I've had Lyme disease. I've had a ton of other things. No one ever had any answers. I had to figure it all out myself. And I got let out of construction. Lord got a hold of me, told me to quit work, go back to school. And somebody that's been working since they're 11 years old, that is hard to do. That's really, really hard to do, and made the big step. He told me where to go. And, we're 4 decades down the road, having shared patients with some of the most prestigious doctors and clinics in the world. In every case in 4 decades, we beat them in diagnostics, care, and resolution of every single case for almost 4 decades.
Wow.
So that's me.
Well, I know. So I myself do energy work, and it's called total body analysis. And in my studies, it became really apparent for me anyways, by way of learning, that the truth that regular physicians, Western medicine, can do 2 things: prescribe you drugs or cut it out of you. That's really
Well
it.
said. Yeah, well said.
And if it can't be fixed with drugs or cutting it out of you, which is cutting the check engine light, really a drug at this point is cutting the check engine light. It's like, here, just make that thing go away. We're not really going to find out what the root cause is. We're just going to shut down the check engine light. We're not really fixing any problems in Western medicine with these modes, and Lyme disease for myself. I had Lyme. I grew up in Ohio, but moved to New Jersey later in life and contracted Lyme, and Western medicine didn't get rid of it. And that's how I got into energy medicine, and Lyme disease actually ended up changing the trajectory of my entire life, which is why I'm sitting in this chair right now. But what are you seeing? Because I feel like everybody has Hashimoto's. I feel like everybody has these autoimmune diseases, as they call them, and they're just cutting the check engine light all over the place and not really finding out what's wrong with people. How are you finding these things out, and how are you helping people?
Really interesting question, because you can tie all that together. I was asked to do a summit a while ago, and they wanted me to talk about education within all the different professions that produce, quote, doctors. And it starts way back with Rockefeller. He and Carnegie invested a whole bunch in the pharmaceutical industry, Merck and Pfizer, and they changed the whole course of medicine in all of North America. There were like 177 different medical schools. By the time they were done with their propaganda issue, there were 77, and everybody had the same curriculum that they started with their own schools. And they got some guy, I forget what his name was. They started Johns Hopkins University with this diagnostic stuff that they do with the lab tests. The lab tests were designed only to promote pharmaceutical use, never to find a root cause.
Okay.
And people are religiously stuck on this quote science, but I talk about science quite a bit in the fact that Baron Trump was at a lecture hall sometime recently, and there was a guy in there who was like king of his lecture, and he has just assailed anybody that he didn't like with a certain belief system. And Baron Trump's happened to be Christianity, and he I just assailed everybody. And Baron Trump, at 18 years old, was the first one to dismantle this guy, and he couldn't even talk. And he ended up his address with this thing called bias. Anybody that has a bias with any type of critical thinking type of function, all it is manipulation. It's not science. And when you take science with a bias that says, okay, we're going to use this to be able to increase the use of pharmaceuticals, then it's not real science. 40% of the best articles in the most peer-reviewed journals in the world have what's called spin on them. The results are not supported by the study. In America, it's figured at least 70, 75%, 75% of the time, that's overt fraud. So what's gone on with the medical system, it infiltrated the other doctorate programs, chiropractic, naturopathic, homeopathic, to take the same diagnostic system that comes off of Louis Pasteur's work. He was the father of the germ theory, and he believed germ A caused disease A, germ B caused disease B. If you could find the germ, kill the germ, everybody'd be fine. By the time Louis Pasteur was close to the end of his life, he recognized that he'd wasted his time and all of his efforts. And he said, the germ is nothing. The soil is everything. He's referring to Claude Bernard, who is the father of the train theory. And he was teaching in the medical schools in France, this physical vitalism, which is a constitution of the body, the strength of the systems and all that determine whether these microbes grow and people get disease. So when you look at what's gone on with functional medicine, the medical doctors came in there, they courted everybody to throw away their diagnostic systems and use a lab test. Anybody that's using a lab test, they're just a shadow of what's going on. If we look at the Old World Dictionary, it's an attendant to what the real problem is. It's not the real problem. Everybody in every profession is looking at how to calm these symptoms
Yeah.
down rather than what's causing this.
Yeah, but I
So,
don't you
so
think that
that's
that's also the sickness of Americans is we want it now. I want to take a pill, I want it to go away versus you're going to have to lose 40 pounds, you're going to have to stop eating shit. I mean, my husband, I was like dying for sugar the other day. And so my husband's like, all right, I'll get you something in the gas station. And he came out with like these gummy circle things. I don't even know what they were. And I put it in my mouth and I was like, oh my God, that's so gross. It tastes like chemicals. And it just, I know this, I talk about this, but it was just so weird to me. I'm like, the thing that I just put in my mouth is 100% chemicals. That's all it is. It's 100. I just put a spoonful of chemicals in my mouth, and my brain went, that tastes like chemicals," because it was, because I normally
Yeah.
eat very, very healthy. Um, and it's just so weird to me what we pass off, especially in this country, as food. And then we're irritated when our result of putting, non-gas in the engine, why we have a bad result. And I think Americans, especially because I've traveled to other countries and they primarily eat whole foods, even if it's what I would consider like junk food, like cakes, candy, pastries, donuts. They're still in line with being an actual food that you're eating in another country. Here, so much of what we eat, Doritos and Funyuns and candy and all of this, even bakery, is shelf stable for decades. We're just so used to and find it so normal to eat things that are not in any way, shape, or form food. And we want to continue that and then take the pill to make the sickness stop or make the symptom of the sickness stop. Do you think that's because of the training of physicians that say, take this pill, instead of saying, you're fat, you eat like shit, you drink 7 days a week, you whatever, you get 4 hours of sleep at night, and you're living on coffee and Funyuns? Um, don't you think it's just the illness of our society as well?
It actually started many presidents ago when one of his advisors decided that they were going to make corn a major
Oh God, yeah.
staple in America. And when you look at your gummies, those are almost all corn syrup.
Yeah.
What the problem with corn is they GMO isn't the real issue. The real issue is herbicides and pesticides they need to use to grow it. They use two chemicals on corn more than any other crop that we have. And I'll get to that in a minute. With JFK Jr., he talks about all the subsidy of farming. The 73 to 75% of the farmers in America are subsidized. Virtually all of that subsidized food, almost all of it goes to making high calorie, absolute devoid of nutritional food. Since it's subsidized, it's cheaper on the shelf than real food is. And that's what drives everybody for all that. So if we look at just corn, they have to use atrazine to keep it growing. That's a pre-emergent herbicide. That means it keeps things from sprouting. And then they follow that with Roundup, that's after it sprouts, to kill anything other than the crop you want.
Yeah.
Atrazine, with a runoff of the fields going into the ponds and swamps and all that, it takes male frogs, makes them develop female reproductive organs that can produce eggs that are fertilizable, and it'll turn into tadpoles once they're fertilized. Highly mutagenic. It totally destroys the ability to make testosterone. It makes fish grow both male and female reproductive systems. It's common in reptiles. It's throughout everything. And there's a couple things that does, but when you take the corn products and you concentrate those, you increase the level of atrazine and Roundup in those foods in a huge way. One of the things the herbicides do, when Roundup first came out on the market, it was a drain cleaner.
Mm.
It chelates minerals and puts them in a different form. So it dissolved those plaques in the pipes. Well, it does the same thing in us. And if you look up on a Google search what Roundup does, you fill up a page. If you look
Yeah.
at atrazine, 3 pages later, you haven't exhausted it. It's way more than this. But what it does, it chelates all your minerals. And when it chelates your minerals, it shuts down all your metabolic processes. Detoxification is one of those processes that shuts down. So when you take anything with corn in it, corn is in everything. It's in your tires, your brake pads, your spark plugs, even. It's in
Well, I mean, and
all of
then they
your
feed it to cows, and then it's in your meat.
right. And anything that's fed in a feedlot is full of corn. Wheat, 95% of the hard wheat crop sprayed with Roundup 2 days to 3 weeks before it's harvested. So it's really toxic, and it just goes on down the line. That's all of the subsidization of things like that, and that's what drives the food. And interesting things that you felt like you needed some sugar. We've got more taste buds in our gut than we have on our tongue, more different varieties and a whole bunch more quantity. It's the taste buds that make us crave food. And there's a microbial coating in the entire gut that'll make us crave food that makes it so that it survives. People that get sugar cravings, women get that for two reasons. One, if they're getting close, the week before their cycle, if their magnesium levels are low, they crave sugar because magnesium, like chocolate, is full of magnesium, but it's all
Mm.
bound up. You can't absorb it. And if you eat a lot of greens, you don't get those cravings, for the cycle issues. But the flora is generally a pathological flora full of all kinds of candida, and that will make us crave the food that it's primary food that it survives off of, which is sugar.
Yeah. I mean, and they say what is like sugar is like cancer's food. I mean, like starve the sugar, starve the cancer. At least that's what I've always been told when I went through it, is like stay away from as much sugar as possible. But I think people don't even realize what sugar kind of is anymore. Like, I think people think sugar is just sugar. Like, don't put sugar in your coffee then. And then it's like, okay, don't eat ice cream. But sugar comes in many, many forms.
Yeah, we test people on probably 20 different varieties of sugar, every single person that we see. When you look at the artificial sweeteners, they all are, first, they're neurotoxins. Second,
Yeah.
they dysregulate your blood sugars. So blood sugar is controlled more by the adrenals and inflammatory issues than it is by insulin. Insulin is just a catch up for everything else. But diabetes, that's all adrenal problems and all that. So when you look at sugars, you got agave, you got xylitol. Xylitol is a corn product. You got stevia. Xylitol and stevia, they add erythritol. It's many times sweeter than regular corn, but it's highly toxic. It dysregulates all your blood sugars. And you got all these things in with everything. It's engineered. When you look at your engineered foods, they can make cardboard taste like anything you want. And they add these addictive qualities to these food hormone types of things, so that, say you take a Coke, a Diet Coke, and you're saving yourself from the calories. The diet side, the artificial sugar, it dysregulates your blood sugar. Then they got this addictive thing that makes you have all kinds of munchies along with it, which is toxic also. And you're just filling your body with all kinds of toxins, which is what sets the stage for everything you talked about.
Well, I will say, like, when I stopped doing, the Diet Coke and cigarettes in my 20s, like, that was my diet, 18, 19, 20 years old. And, as you get older, you can't do it. I mean, at least I can't. Like, there's just no
Yeah.
way. It's weird that you crave dumb stuff like an apple or a banana. Like, I actually crave apples. Like, I crave fruits or, things of that nature. And it's weird when you start to get rid of anything and everything that's like all that processed food, that you primarily don't have cravings. I know the reason that I've been having cravings. I just had a surgery 2.5 weeks ago. So I'm still coming off of a lot of the meds, a lot of the drugs, a lot of like an antibiotic, which I haven't taken antibiotics in years. So I know that has just completely put my system out of whack. Let me ask you, because you're in it, you see it, you've done the work, you've seen a million people. What do you eat in a day? Where do you shop? What does your
Okay.
diet look like?
My diet really looks like a tribal indigenous person's diet. So I'll say this, and then I'll explain what we do. Um, I'm a pilot also. I got two brothers that are pilots, and I had bought a plane on the West Coast and lived in the Midwest at the time, and flew back with one of my brothers, and we're up in the air, and going over the mountains, you're way up high and the oxygen's low, and you don't realize your vision tunnels and all that. And he reaches in the bag and he goes, "You want an apple?" I go, "Yeah, sure." I started eating this apple and my vision cleared up.
Wow.
And this tunnel opened back up, and I didn't realize the power of an apple. They say an apple a day keeps a doctor
My
away.
mom just sent
It's
me that text this morning. She said an apple a day keeps the doctor. Swear to
yeah,
God, just this morning.
yeah, yeah, and I'm thinking of that as you're talking about that. We don't realize how brightening different kinds of foods are. So
They
when you
say there's
look at
more energy in eating an apple than drinking up a cup of coffee in the morning.
and that's part of the reason why. But when you look at the blue zones, it's really our best model
Yep.
for the way that we should eat. Those people commonly live 120. The thing that really I think is interesting with the people in the blue zones, their sexual interaction in their 90s is what the people are in their 30s over here in the
Wow.
USA. And it's crazy what we accept because that's our societal norm, but it's not a physiological norm whatsoever. So you look at any group of people that's healthy,
Hmm.
50% of their plates vegetables every single meal. So our typical breakfast is a stir fry. We sweet potatoes are one of the few nightshades that are clean.
Yeah.
My wife, she bakes sweet potatoes. It's like at 325, it's 7 minutes per inch of diameter to get them so that they're still crunchy,
Okay.
but it doesn't convert all the starch into sugar. If you overcook them, they're mushy. It's all sugar, and then they're no
Okay.
good.
So wait a second. What was that? 325 degrees for what?
1 minute or 7 minutes per inch of diameter, and they're perfect. And
Okay.
then you can store those in the refrigerator. And when you want to make something, all you got to do is warm them up, not cook them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So making a stir fry, there's a lot of sweet potatoes in there, mushrooms, onions, lots of greens. My wife loves greens. She makes everything really colorful and really, really pretty with garnishes and things like that. With some eggs on it, we got our own chickens. We make our own chicken food because we can't find any that doesn't have any corn.
Yep.
So our chickens eat all organic stuff, and that's whatever. So a lot of people have thought I'm vegetarian. We're close to that. My wife would just as soon be that way. We eat a little bit of meat, a little bit of fish, a little bit of chicken. I'm more like I don't. Neither one of us like beef, and that's just our personal choice. I'd
Yeah.
much rather have venison, things like that, and I can get that really clean. I do my own butchering, always have since I was young.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of a whole bunch of things. The meat's more like a garnish
Hmm.
rather
Yeah.
than
Instead of
this
a
great
main deal.
great big huge thing, and lots and lots of spices.
Well, I
That's where
did
you
know,
get
like, my daughter and I, my 16-year-old and I watched that Blue Zone show on Netflix. I've talked about it actually quite a bit on this podcast, how life-changing that is to see. They walk everywhere. It's constant movement. It's, community. It's having a purpose in life. It's sweet potatoes. And the quantity of food is so much different. Like here, 750 calories is a small hamburger from McDonald's. You think you just had a small hamburger, but the density and the lack of nutrition in a small hamburger versus their 750 calories is an entire table of food, an entire
Mhm.
table.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I actually just woke up this morning. I must have knew I was going to talk to you today. And I was thinking about one of this boy that I know here in town, and he's very, very, very thin, um, but primarily, eats fast food. And I think that we don't understand a lot of times in this country that being profoundly overweight is a sign of malnutrition, and being super thin isn't necessarily a sign of health. And we need to get that
Right.
kind of out of our brains, because thin does not mean um, healthy, and heavy does not mean nourished.
Right. So let's springboard off of this, and we'll turn this conversation a little bit into what food actually does.
Yeah.
Is when we look at our gut, because the gut is really the fulcrum of health. Colon health, which is nobody wants to talk about, is what all of our health hinges on. Whether somebody's going to heal or not heal, how
Okay.
fast they're going to heal is 100% dependent on colon health. So we look at food. The first thing we need to consider with the food we intake is bowel habits. Another thing people do not want to talk about, but you look in the blue zones where they have no gastrointestinal disease. Their normal bowel habits are 3 to 5 times a day.
Wow.
Okay. My years ago, we had somebody come in our office and they said their girlfriend went once every 2 to 3 weeks. And I thought they were kidding, a real jokester. That woman came in later. She got giddy when her bowel habits got up to 3 times a day because her whole life changed. The record that we've seen is once every 5 to 6 weeks. Now, at what point is this not okay?
Well, I
People
mean, their
just think,
stomach has to be humongous. I
no, it's toxic.
just
It's really toxic. So,
yeah.
so if we look at what food does, if we look at the gut health, because this is really where health all hinges off of. You, if you hold your fingers up in front of your face, your fingers they represent the lining of your gut called the microvilli. There's these
Okay.
little projections that come off the wall of the gut. That increases the surface area of the gut 400 times. It's insane. It's like 6 square feet. Without those microvilli, it's the surface area of a tennis court where the microvilli. The
Okay.
microvilli, they secrete a mucus that fills up in between the fingers and caps over the top, and that's where all the microbes live. The food can't touch the microvilli. It's full of mucus. It's full of all these microbes, and the microbes do most of the digestion. It's the same thing in the soil with the roots of plants and all that. It's all set up the same way. Whenever we have healthy food, those microvilli stay really healthy and they produce the right amount of mucus and you get the right kind of microbes to grow. You do anything that creates an inflammatory response, and it's like you take those fingers and you roll your hand into a fist and you roll it so you're just looking at your knuckles.
Are
That's
they hiding? Is that I mean, are they like going and hiding because they're trying to get
no,
not
no,
absorb?
that the inflammatory response in the gut atrophies them. That can happen in 24 hours.
Okay.
As that happens, there's no place for the healthy microbes to grow. They wash out into the toilet, and the only thing that's left is pathogens. They grow wholesale. The gut starts to leak like a sieve. Inside of the gut, we have 3 of our 4 detox organs. Almost nobody knows this, and it really is a shock what they don't put in the physiology textbooks. In that book that I've got, Exposing Lyme and Chronic Illness, I've got 6 or 7 chapters on physiology. And the reason why is if you can't figure out what's actually going on
Yes.
inside of somebody, you can't help them whatsoever. That book should be in every doctorate program around the globe. It's so full of information. There's more information in that than there is in Ivy League medical schools.
Yeah.
And I've
Well, I think
proved it
that as a
over and
general
over.
rule, most I'm seeing doctors now just say the Mediterranean diet. That seems to be what they're saying if they even mention nutrition in any way, shape, or form. Usually it's just you need to lose weight. And then, well, what should I do? I mean, I actually asked a primary care for a referral for a nutritionist, and they're like, you're better off finding someone on Instagram than seeing one of our doctors,
Do you know
nutritionists.
why?
No.
Okay, all nutrition is set up for hospital care
Mm,
and hospital food.
yeah.
The studies show that the hospital is the most dangerous place to eat in North America by far. You go down to Mexico, it's a gourmet restaurant. You come up here, it's absolutely totally toxic,
Yeah.
100% toxic. So if we come back to, what's going on inside of the gut, the gut lining, the gut wall, the small intestinal wall is one of our detox organs. The colon wall is another one, and the microbiota in the gut is a third one. The liver is only a catch-all for where most of the toxins should come into the body, through the gut, catches everything, and it's supposed to stay in this short loop of gut to liver back into the gut until we can process it and excrete it. Detox happens in two phases. Phase one makes things free radicals, way more toxic than they were in the first place. Phase two takes those free radicals, makes them water soluble so we can excrete them. So when you get this atrophy going on inside of the gut, it leaks like a sieve. It's dumping super toxins that are highly antigenic to excite the immune system in all kinds of ways. It overwhelms the liver, spills out through the rest of the body. This is where most of the quote symptoms of almost all illness come from, is toxicity. It's not the infections. And you talk about Lyme disease. Everybody wants to go kill the Borrelia bacteria, the Lyme bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
The Lyme never comes on its own. There's multiple infections. The Borrelia is a bacterial one, Ehrlichia is a bacterial one, Rickettsia is a bacterial one, Babesia, it's a single-celled animal parasite, climbs into your red blood cells and eats them from the inside out. There's fungal infections, viral infections. There's all these things, and everybody wants to focus on Borrelia. It's not the problem. The problem is what beat the immune system up to allow it to grow in the first place. So,
and a lot of times that's stress. A lot of times that's emotional stress. But I also, as I just said that, I thought, well, you probably could handle the emotional stress if your body wasn't under so much stress from just trying to survive the climate that you've given it, which is toxicity.
Yeah. And if you look at any kind of stress will do the same thing with the atrophy of the microvilli in the gut. 24 hours of extreme stress will make that atrophy. Steroids make that atrophy. NSAIDs, aspirin, Aleve, Motrin, that makes it do it. Antibiotics do it. Antifungals do it. You take your toxic food, that does it. We've got a multitude of different things that create it, but its result is the same thing. And this is what sets the stage for everything.
Yeah. My son, he's allergic to red dye, and we just don't eat that. Don't eat that. He just turned 14. They just don't, like when you're talking, all I can hear, because I have a friend that I'm like, want to send all this information to her because she's just really struggling. She's really suffering with autoimmune and just been sick for years in constant chronic pain. And I can hear so many people listening to this right now just saying, well, the constant, well, geez, always, everything makes you sick. Like, where do you even start? Like, I don't want to hear it. You can't eat this. You can't eat that. You can't, like, everybody kind of throws the baby out with the bathwater and says, well, everything makes you sick. So screw it. Honestly, like I hear a lot of people talk like that, and they just give up before they even get started because it seems so overwhelming. So what are you doing in your clinic so people can reach out to you? On the phone, by way of your website, just to touch this quick, is hello.healthfullyu, the letter u.com. So hello.healthfullyu.com. And you do appointments with people. What does that look like? So if I send my friend to you and I say, all right, Dr. Brad, my friend's coming in, what should she expect? What does that look like, soup to nuts, for the most part? A visit with you over the phone, in person, what is that like?
Oh, okay. I'm going to back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I'll answer that.
I know I asked 10 questions at once. I get it.
It's okay. But you said something that's really key for everybody to hear. I was at a business talk a while ago, and I was just about to release my book, Exposing Lyme and Chronic Illness. And I said, everybody introduced themselves, and we had a dinner, and then people talked. And instead, I introduced myself, said, I'm Dr. Brad. I'm one of the speakers tonight. I'm going to give you guys a choice. While you're eating dinner, you think about this. I can either talk about my book I'm about ready to release, or I can just an open Q&A.
I love Q&A.
I've got a really deep chest of information. And so everybody eats and comes time for me to talk. I said, okay, what do you want to do? And one of the other docs, or three more docs in there, in that talk, one of them said, what do you do for COVID? And that opened up a conversation that blew everybody's mind. Different subject, different topic. I'm not going to address that right now. But in that talk, I brought up this thing about autoimmunity. One of those doctors in the room was an autoimmune specialist. And I said, your immune system only functions, it only responds to two things only. That's it. What are they? None of the other docs knew. Shocking. Not even the autoimmune specialist knew what it responded to. It responds to inflammation in general sense and antigens in a second sense. Antigens just a calling card, says, hey, I'm Pete, I'm Joe, I'm whatever. And there's some of those that are okay inside of us and some that aren't. The bulk of the antigens that create autoimmunity is toxicity. And most of that comes from the leaky gut, pathogens growing inside of the gut. And you've got to address all that to resolve everything. So recently, Mark Hyman's arguably the most famous, most well-known of all the functional medicine docs out there. He was talking about their extensive testing. They have 100 different tests they run people through. And I looked at mine a while ago. We're 4.5 times that.
You run
Literally.
400 tests?
450 on average or more. And a good friend of mine's top functional medicine, different part of the country, his metabolic tests are 52 or 5 times that. And the reason why is you have to evaluate everything that could possibly going on. Metabolic functions, physiological functions, hormonal dysregulation, all the side issues with that, gut health, all the physiology things, food intolerance. You got to evaluate everything. We do. Most of the people we work with are distant, and you got to deal with everything. If mold's an issue, we test for mold. If mold's an issue, then we've got to do home evaluations. We do that at a distance also, and it's an amazing thing. My process starts with a consult. I've got 2 forms. One of them's a questionnaire, and the other one's just an agreement. Allows me to interact with them. The questionnaire is set up into different systems within the body. And in my book, I talk about the interactive flow of physiology from one system to another, not the way Guyton's textbook of medical physiology, like there are all these disjointed parts that don't interact. So I bring it all together in a flow of systems with all that. And these questionnaires are set up so I can look at that. And I can look at how somebody fills out this questionnaire. And to me, I talk about the story that gives it. That's the story of what brought them to the point where they're at. And we go back generations in that. Yeah, the health of a mother when she gets pregnant affects 5 generations minimum.
Wow.
Maybe more than that. So you got to go back from that. And here's an example of that. A woman came in, she'd been seeing some other natural docs, and her health was marginal. And she just hit a point where it was just kind of going downhill. And I'd met her, we'd interacted at different times. She finally got a hold of me, set up an appointment, came in, and I do this evaluation. And I'm blown away by what I find. I see things that I hadn't seen before. There's hepatitis. There's all kinds of STDs. There's a full bloom of
in this one person.
In this one person,
oh wow!
There's a full bloom of Lyme disease. There's candida. There's every kind of metabolic dysfunction, hormonal dysregulation, huge amount of food intolerance responses. And I'm going, wow, this is pretty crazy. But I'm looking at the history and I go, oh, this makes sense. She was born in a foreign country. Her mother almost bled to death. They gave her transfusion in a country where hepatitis is endemic. It's just throughout the whole population. And blood transfusion was full of all this toxic stuff.
Yeah.
She's a Christian woman with, heritage of long-term Christianity. They're not out there playing around. They're not doing what people typically do to get that. That wasn't the case. And I knew that. And she's got a bunch of children. I'm looking at this. We got 3 generations of that. And I thought, okay, if you got this, your husband's got this too. And so are your kids. Because all these things are fluid transfer diseases. People think Lyme disease is tick-borne. No, it's not. It's fluid transfer. Anything that takes a fluid from an infected host and transfers it is a route of transmission. Mosquitoes, gnats, biting flies, spit, sexual fluids, you name it. There's no respect to boundaries with these things. Absolutely none. It doesn't matter what people want to say. Why would a microbe just have any respect for some kind of boundary that some idiot puts up? Because they don't understand. It's just absolutely 100% not the case. And everyone in that family has the same thing. Wow. And all the children born after her have the same thing. Wow. And it's an amazing thing. You look at hepatitis, it took us 6 weeks to clear that. Epstein-Barr was 5 or 6 weeks. You look at Lyme disease, we can clear Lyme disease pretty quick, but it's, like 6 to 8 weeks in most of it. Babesia depends on what strain. It's like 4 months. But it's the.
Do you lean more into supplements or diets, or what's when you're saying we got rid of it? What does that look like?
It's everything. We address lifestyle in every different aspect. So I'll finish this, and then I'll say that it's what set the stage to allow this stuff to grow. Mm-hmm. Is what takes the time to heal. It's not just getting rid of the infections. And I've got a long history of clearing infections, and people aren't well. It's not what the issue is. You got to do everything else. So when you look at it, we evaluate, first of all, the metabolic functions, figure out what root issues are, how to clear that. Then we pull that aside. We look at food intolerance. We got to find out what people can eat to stay healthy. And that list is oftentimes people on real restricted diet. It expands their diet a lot because they can finally know what they're going to eat. Yeah. That's not the issue. The issue is substitution. You substitute your favorite things for things that are clean. And that is the key. People don't know what that looks like. And we walk with people through that. That's a huge transition, but diet's half of the equation. And if you don't address it, doesn't do it. People that are sloppy with their diet, that same woman, she's extended her healing out twice as long as what it should have been. She sent her cousin and his wife. She sent them in, had them get a hold of me because they are in their middle 30s. They want a family and they have not been able to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And do an evaluation. The husband was twice as bad as the wife. And I said, looking at the woman, I said, I think we're probably going to be able to get in 4 months. I think we're going to have you ready to get pregnant. And that 4 months is in a week and a half. And she's right there. Her husband, looking at how much this means to his wife and how much he wants a family, has been one of the most rigid with his diet that you could possibly be. He's cut his healing in half, literally in half. And he's going to heal at the same time his wife was when he was twice as bad. Wow. It should have taken twice as long because he's that rigid with what he's doing. And he's really teasing his cousin who's really sloppy and stretching things out with that because, and I've talked to him a whole bunch about women's cycles, all the indications that go on, how long she is fertile for. And I told this guy, they're both Christians, and I told him there's a passage in the Bible that says, husband, love your wife in an understanding manner. That is a requirement for men to study women in general, his wife in particular, to understand what her needs are, how to fulfill her, how to please her, to really make her life really rich. He's taken that to an nth degree. He's studying all these things about what I've talked about, cycles and all the indications of all that. And he says, I think I know more than my wife. I talked to her last week and she says he does. He's not bragging. He's
Yeah.
taken what I talked to him because it's that important. I said, you guys got a few hour window in the schedule you have. When she comes into her next time when she's close to ovulating, you guys got to throw your schedule out the window.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
really got to be serious about this. And explain how they can tell through cervical mucus and all that other stuff. And he's right on it. And it's a beautiful thing. Years ago, we had a couple that came in. They were really, really, really sick. It was in May. They were going to get married and they want to get pregnant in August. And what she was doing for birth control shouldn't have allowed her to get pregnant for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Literally. It was that toxic. Well, we started working in May. They got married and they got pregnant in August. It's a physiological impossibility unless you do things right. So
Yeah.
you ask, what's working with this look like? We start with these questionnaires and we do a consult. And what that allows me to see is what all the root issues are, expected root issues, what we can expect. Then we talk about how to go forward, what that's going to look like, and it depends on what's going on, how that's going to look like. We figured out years ago, the Lord moved us from one part of the country to another, and people were begging me to figure out how to work with them at a distance. I didn't have a belief system for it. I just didn't. And I'm just blowing it off until it's really obvious we're going to move. It's like, okay, I need to test this out. Even though I don't have a belief system, I'm going to do this. So we started testing people at a farther and farther distance. And the last part of my testing, we were testing people blindly. Didn't know who they were, didn't know what they had. Tested them blindly and brought them in our office. And I'm talking like 200 tests at least.
Are you doing like long distance kinesiology or is this blood tests?
Blood tests are, you look like Lyme tests, 0 to 20% accuracy. If you get the lab sample within the first 1 to 2 weeks of infection, food intolerance 2 to 3% accurate. It's totally inaccurate.
Okay.
So we use muscle testing. It
Muscle
works off of
testing.
electromagnetics, and when you look at an atom, everything we're taught in school is a lie. And they're not these solar systems of orbitals. They're really different. And what an atom really is an electromagnetic pump. And muscle testing, it tests the integrity of those electromagnetic pumps inside of a body, and you can test any function in every organ system. You can prove what therapy will actually heal somebody before you give them a thing. You can
Mm-hmm.
prove it. And it's so compelling that 4-year-olds get it. And they'll argue with their parents, I want to do what the doctor you took me to today said because I know they can heal me. So it's absolutely totally compelling. We started working with people globally, and I got somebody in Australia they spent 50,000 a week in some of these designer clinics with no help whatsoever. And
Mm-hmm.
what he's read every Lyme book he could ever get a hold of, and what he says you're light years ahead of anybody else in the industry. No one talks about what you're talking about. I just did a talk with a doc up in Canada last week, and what he said was, I think these things are humbling. This isn't braggadocio. To me, this is humbling stuff. He said it's like a once in a lifetime thing where you get the opportunity for someone who's dropped into your presence that's generations ahead of everyone else. And that's what's happening right here, right
Yeah. Do you
now.
know about Dr. Dahan and total body analysis?
That name doesn't sound familiar
Okay.
to
That's
me.
what I studied under doing the advanced kinesiology, the long distance muscle testing. That's what I do too. For a myriad of things. I do it for emotional release and all that kind of stuff. So I totally am in alignment with what you're talking about. I know exactly what I don't have your list of 500 tests. I do it a little bit differently.
Right.
But it's the same thing. And also, it does get to the root instead of the symptom.
If you,
I
yeah,
follow the symptoms to find the root. I'm up every night at 3 a.m. I have psoriasis. I have so I know that. And then you go, okay, where is that coming from by way of kinesiology? But yeah, it's so, can you talk about like what a person can expect financially? Are you willing to talk about that so that I can, like, people
yeah,
have an
yeah,
idea of what they're
yeah,
looking at?
yeah. I think you can tell I'm pretty transparent.
Yeah.
And it's I've done a bunch of talks with people where, and this is one of those. We've never met before. We've never talked. We really haven't had dialogue on email. You just said, "Wow, let's do this," and this hole opened up, and it's like, okay. Um, so most of the people I work with have seen multiple docs. They're really, really, really sick. We've
Yep.
got people who, some of them 23 and a half hours and a day in bed,
Mm,
get up to take a shower, eat a meal, and back in bed. They're that sick. People who can drag themselves from the bedroom to the bathroom barely. They can't function. They can't communicate. They can't do anything. I'm dealing with the worst of the worst. So when I talk about people that we see that been to the best doctors, I'm not cherry picking great cases. I'm talking the worst of the worst, and we
yeah.
we get them all really well. Those ones take extended periods of time. Not everybody's like this, but for someone who's been to multiple docs, got a plethora of things going on and all that, I start them off with a 6-month course of care. If you went to any other clinic and tried to get lab tests to get a fraction of what I find in my first evaluation, you drop over 9 grand. We do that at the end of every month. At the end of 6 months, you're talking way over 50 grand lab tests, no care, no direction of anything, absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It's a total waste of time. Since we do all of our own labs and we all do it this way, my fee for everything that I do, so all my interaction, the only thing on top of this, no hidden costs, anything, is supplements. The only thing is on top of that, $7,500 for a 6-month course of care. And I got 2 guarantees with that. First guarantee is if on the evaluation, if I can't find what the root cause is and how to resolve it, I don't charge you anything. I don't tell you what I found. We go our separate ways. In 4 decades, no one's ever taken me up on that. My second guarantee is, I added this a while back. If we do a 6-month program, then in 6 months, we don't have significant impact and change, positive change in metabolic function and infectives, I'll continue to work for free until we do. No one's
Wow.
ever taken me up on that. People
Wow.
say there's no guarantees in healthcare. That's because people don't know what they're doing. When I do an evaluation, I can tell people how long it's going to take to heal. I don't know any other practitioner in the world that does that. And I'm not just blowing smoke. These aren't pulled out of thin air. These are from clinical experience of working with people with these kinds of things for 4 decades. We're at the tail end of 4 decades, and that's way longer than most people are doing that. And you can listen to me. My mind's still bright. I can still function, and I do a ton of different things. I'm not what most people think normal, and that's okay.
Yeah. Me
That
too.
everybody is done differently, but we start with weekly interaction. Most people, they do what they're doing. They'll have you start something, they'll check in 6 weeks. We're weekly interaction for the average of about 6 weeks. First week is typically damage control, getting people so they can get everything working. And we start off addressing at least 80% of the systems. We've got to get bowel functions up, nutrition up, and some other things functioning right before you can start cleansing out the liver and the gallbladder and some of the other things like that. So it's getting everything so everything's working, everything's functioning well, and all that. Then it spreads out once every 2 weeks. Sometimes we can go farther than that. Sometimes we can't. We do that for 6 months, and it's insanely cheap when
Yeah.
you think about the care that's going on out there. And we get to know each other very well. It becomes pretty intimate. You interact with different people, and we do all kinds of different things. We sold our last house. We had a cottage that that was set up so we could house different people in it. And our neighbor was too toxic. We had to move, but we were working with somebody in the Midwest, and um, just out of a whim, just said, she didn't know how to cook. They young couple, she really wanted to start a family, couldn't do it. She was flat out in bed, couldn't even get up to clean the kitchen. Had to
Wow.
have family come in and help her and all that. And they just really want to get pregnant. And we had them come out and stay in our cottage. And I taught her how to cook. I do our I built a kitchen. It was really set up really, really well. I've been a custom builder for 50 years.
Okay.
So I've got a lot of hats, just a lot of hats. And I worked with her so that she cooked everything. And her world just opened up. Her mom never taught her how to cook. It's just, insanity and all that. And she cooked things she'd never heard of. She'd never tried before. It was really a lot of fun to do. That completely changed her world around. They went a little bit farther. They got pregnant right away. They might have got pregnant in the cottage. That it was pretty close to that period of time. They had another one. She's pregnant for the third time, and this isn't that long a time through. And most doctors won't get vulnerable. Most doctors don't communicate with people. They don't talk to people.
I
It's
just
one
don't
of
think they
those.
know what to do. I mean, it's just like, all right, I'm looking at it. You got follicles. You've got two fallopian tubes. I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. Your husband's stuff's working, and they just like. I think so often it's just like chalk it up to, historically you have high cholesterol, or you're just not gonna have a kid. Like I just think that they would love to help, but I think a lot of times Western medicine isn't given the tools to help,
Well,
really.
none of the schools that produce doctors are given the tools.
Yeah.
When you look at the clinical sciences that are taught in medical school, they're identical in chiropractic school. Their curriculum is basically the same. It's just their clinical applications that are different. Homeopathy and naturopathic, they have no clinical sciences, none. I
Yeah.
was shocked. I was absolutely shocked looking at that. But there's not one of those institutions that teaches the aspects of chronic illness and how to resolve them. It's all by guess and by golly, one size fits all things. And
Yeah.
you look at like the supplement industry. Melaleuca built their whole supplement line off of tea tree oil. Well, tea tree oil is a great thing, but does it need to be in vitamin? Does it need to be in minerals? I mean, it doesn't fix everything. And you got other companies, aloe vera is a key thing. So they put aloe vera in everything. That's not the cure all for everything.
Yeah.
We can't we can't approach things like this. We've got to find out what the real problem is and address the real problems, and everything else resolves itself. And there's no other diagnostic tool other than muscle testing that will allow that. You
Yeah.
got dark field microscopy, it doesn't do it. Electrodiagnostics, it doesn't do it. And lab tests are set up to just give you some type of therapeutic intervention, not to find a root cause. So whether you throw in supplements, herbs, tinctures, or drugs, doesn't matter. It's the same thing. The results are the same. It's a guess leading to a guess, and let's hang it on and see how it works. And
Yep.
that doesn't work.
No, I agree with that. Well, I so appreciate this conversation and your books. You have a free ebook, everybody. He's got a free ebook out there. Go to hello.healthfullyu, the letter u.com. And that free ebook is called Healing Lifestyle. And then your new book is Exposing Lyme and Chronic Illness. Where can they find that book at?
Um, There's links on the thank you page for hello.healthfullyu that takes you to my webpage, takes you to the book, takes you to our podcast. It takes you anywhere you would need to go. And I'll say something about the healing lifestyle. It's a book on how to do simple things to change your epigenetics. Epigenetics is how you change the expression of your genes. It doesn't change your chromosomes. It doesn't change the genes. It changes how they express themselves. And every gene has 30,000 different potential ways to express itself. How you change your lifestyle changes your expression. That book is how to do that in a whole bunch of very simple aspects. It's so valuable in that. It's so powerful what's in that little book. And it's
So a
free.
great place to start to get
Yeah.
kind of an idea of what to expect. And then if they want to reach out to you, they can do so at hello.healthfullyu.com as well. There's a way to get a hold of you there.
That takes you to our website. Our website's healthfullyu.com. We've got consults there, our phone numbers there. I actually talk to people, and we start, but with the consult, with those questionnaires, I'm looking at the story that brought them to the point where they're at, and that's where the keys are. No one's going to be able to help you that doesn't take the time to figure out what that story is, what all your background is, and why you're at in the place that you're at, because that's where the keys are.
Yeah. So good. Well, thank you, Dr. Brett. I appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I enjoyed this talk a lot.
This is great. All right, everybody. I will see you all here again next week. So have a beautiful week and eat healthy and do all the right things. Check Dr. Brad out. And I'll see you guys here next week. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. If you would like to connect on a more personal level, head over to meredythwillits.com or on Instagram at Meredyth with a Y for behind-the-scene footage and outtakes. Please subscribe and come back each week for more Meredyth with a Y. Thanks again for listening. Cheers.